This is very, very important. If there is nothing else, people listening to this, if there's nothing else they get out of our time together and their time spent with us, this is the most important thing. Everything changed for us when we committed as a team to Sabbath weekly. Every week, our team Sabbaths.
Well, hey there. Welcome to the Missional Marketing Podcast. I'm Bart Blair, joined as always by the CEO of Missional Marketing, Jason Hamrock. And our goal today is to help your church grow by leveraging digital marketing and effective communications. And speaking of communications, our guest today is a guy that I'm just going to go on a limb and I'm going to call him a church communications guru. Clint Lewis from Gateway Church is the guest you're going to hear from today.
Yeah, Gateway Church. This is a huge influential church in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And Clint, we have this great conversation. He talks about when he stepped into his role of how he built and kind of retooled the communications department. So if you're in that space, you are going to benefit from the talk today.
Yeah. And one of the other things that we'll make sure that you're aware of is that sort of close to the end, which means you might have to listen. Maybe you have to listen on 1.5 speed to get there. Clint offers to send some of our listeners a free copy of one of Pastor Robert Morris's books. So make sure that you listen to the end. That information is going to be in the show notes. And just make sure that you check that out. We appreciate you hanging out with us in this podcast format, whether you're watching on YouTube or on our website or listening on your favorite podcast platform. If you haven't left us a rating or review, we'd appreciate you doing that. It just helps more people find this content, which we hope you're finding to be useful. So without any further delay, here's our recent interview with Clint Lewis from Gateway Church. Well, hey, Clint Lewis, thanks so much for joining us on the show today.
Thanks, Bart. Thanks, Jason. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you.
Yeah, one of the things that we love to do with our guests just to get the show started is to have them share their story. So we'd love for you to fill us in on where you came from, what you've been doing with your life, and how you ended up in the role that you're fulfilling at Gateway today.
Yeah, thanks so much for allowing me the opportunity. Really nice to meet you guys and appreciate that. And hopefully something that I share today will be of encouragement to someone. You know, my story is a little bit interesting to me, at least, but when people hear it, I've gotten it down to the 1 minute elevator version. So I'll give you the 2 to 3 minute.
There we go.
If that's fair. But I've been a part of Gateway Church since 2003. So early days, they were 2-3 years old when my wife and I came here. Pastor Robert's book, The Blessed Life, was one that was very meaningful in my life and made a lot of sense to me and how I walked out my life and lived life. And so for 25 years, I was in the media space, radio in particular, and with a handful of different radio stations and radio groups, and 20 and a half year career at a station in Dallas, a station group, and top sales rep there. And around 2016, 2017, the Lord began to call me into ministry and to work for Gateway Church. And it made no sense to me whatsoever, but I was called and I heard, I believed, and I obeyed. And so over about a year-long conversation of saying, wait, are we sure about this? Because I don't want to be that guy that walks away from a storied career and successful in my business, and I walk away and go work at the church. Yay. Okay, great. So the Lord spoke to me very clearly one day, and I asked him for scripture to back the decision to leave my career to go work for Gateway Church. And he very graciously and immediately said the words, Luke 5. Now, Pastor, I did not know, and I had not memorized Luke 5. So I go to Luke 5, and it's the story of the fisher of men when Jesus walked up and called them to follow him. And I thought, oh, that's cute. Well, the Lord then took me on a journey cross-referencing Luke 5, 1 through 11, Mark 1, 16 through 20, and Matthew 4, 18 through 22. And here's what the Lord showed me. He showed me that when he walked up onto the shoreline, he called them to follow him. And they immediately, the key word there is immediately, dropped their nets and followed him. They then got in a boat with him. They were in the shallows. He took them into the deep. And the Lord shared with me right there that what he was going to show me in the depths of where he was going to take me is going to look different than what's in the shallows. And the waters look different. The things look different. The Lord's created in the deep versus the shallows. Then the Lord showed me where he called them to throw their nets out. Well, they were in their vocation, occupation in the moment. They're like, we fished all day. There's not good fishing. They threw their nets out. Their nets were bursting with fish. And the Lord showed me in that moment that he's going to take care of me provisionally, as well as when I got to Gateway, what that represented was salvations and a bursting of salvations. And I'm like, okay, that's excellent. Well, if all of that wasn't good enough, the Lord asked me, he said, Clint, what have you done your vocation, your occupation? I'm like, marketed, promoted, sold things, worked with clients. And he said, right, one of the analogies you would use is you were a fisherman. Caught a whale today, caught a minnow today. I'm like, oh, okay. And the Lord says to me, he said, what you had been doing your vocation, your occupation, is you would catch things that were alive that then would die. He said, I'm flipping the script. I'm calling you to a place where you're going to catch things that are dead that will then become alive in me. Where do I sign? I'm in. So that's my Luke 5 story, as I like to call it. And really, it just boils down to hearing, believing, and obeying, and following the Lord.
Wow. I love that story. I kind of have a similar thing. Come from the marketplace. I like to think God has a sense of humor. Like, you want me? Like, no, me to do this, play this role. And
right.
And it was, I'm so blessed that I stepped in this space of being a communication director of a really large church. It blessed me way more than the other way around. And it's all because God had a plan for our lives, right? Like you said, we just submit and obey, and I believe it. And it's worked out really well. So, okay. So give us a little picture of what it is what do you do for Gateway?
That's a great question. A lot. We do a lot.
Welcome to ministry.
Exactly. So basically, in a nutshell, our team is responsible for the voice of Gateway Church and
Okay.
the brand of Gateway Church and the things that are heard, spoken, seen. I think kind of wanted to give an overview of the team that I lead, if that's all right.
Yeah.
Part of the team, if you will, one thing that I've tried to do since being here is to really surround myself with the best of the best. And, I learned that long time ago, but one particular individual who caught my attention that to me does it the best in the Christian music industry is a guy named Toby Mack. I don't know if you've heard of Toby or not, but if you look at Toby and his longevity, you go, what has made Toby successful? And I had the opportunity one time to sit down with him and have this conversation, actually tell him that I really admire about him is that he has surrounded himself with some of the best musicians, the best singers, the best producers, the best artists. And that's what has helped propel him for decades. And so just taking that concept, I've surrounded myself here at Gateway with the team, just some of the best of the best. We've kind of reworked our structure. And when I came in, I realized we were set up more like a production house where the ministries or the campuses would ask us to produce a widget, produce a thing. And so we got really good at producing things, but we had a mind shift of from being the doers to being the stewards. And what I mean by that is that we would steward vision. We would steward a burden. So when Pastor Robert was coming out with a new series, for example, we'd ask the question, what's the burden? What is the vision that he's wanting to accomplish with this? Or if we have a ministry that says we want to do a thing, say, great. Well, what's the vision and what's the burden? And then it's our job to help create, whether it be visually or with words or with a video, to help support that vision and even that burden. But when we kind of reworked ourselves, we put ourselves in a position instead of a production house, more of a mini boutique ad agency. And really with that, again, like I had said, it's to steward the vision, the burden, and the heart. And then we create from that perspective. Our primary role and responsibility, we've started to shift our thinking as well as our outward facing actions towards people. And that was, we're here to support and serve. Now, we're not the doers of all the things anymore, but we do have experts on the team who can speak into that, and then we can help seek solutions for whatever your goals are or that burden is. We also began to use language like, we're here to serve and support our clients. Mm-hmm. Yikes. You just called a ministry a client. And that has actually picked up some language internally where it's not a bad thing. I mean, they're the ones that are carrying the need to deliver on an event or the weekend services element. And so they're the client. We're here to serve and support them and to help them, again, to accomplish that goal or deliver on that burden. So
let me ask you a follow-up question to that, Clint. So you've been on the staff there at Gateway for about 4 years. Can you kind of alluded to what the department was like when you first got there. You've obviously had to lead some change to get the team where it is today. And it's one thing to lead your team towards that change. It's a completely different ball of wax to get buy-in from all of the other ministry leaders who were accustomed to just seeing your team as a production shop. Hey, we're having this, we're doing this, we need this. What were some of the, I'd love to hear some of the strategies that you had to implement to get buy-in from some of those ministry leaders, as well as to hear about how maybe you had to overcome some pushback that you might have gotten from some of the other ministries, from some people who, hey, look, Clint, I've been on staff here for 10 years and we've been doing it this way for 10 years. And now you come in and you want to change the way we do it. There are going to be some people who are probably going to get their feelings hurt about not being able to do it the way they've always done it. Can you speak into that a little bit?
Absolutely. And I think okay, so just go with me here because we're going to touch on a few different things and you tell me what you want to chase. How about that?
Sure.
So I'll take a little bit high level and then we'll kind of figure out where we want the conversation to go. But I would respond to that by saying, the best thing that my oversight told me coming in is do nothing your first 6 months. I'm like, do nothing my first 6 months? That makes no sense. He's like, just do nothing. I want you to come in and listen and observe. And then the next 6 months, begin to ideate and pray and ask the Lord, how does he see it? What does he see for the future? So again, it's getting leadership buy-in, just being patient with the process and not coming in immediately going, change. So that's one piece that I would add. A second piece would be I had to work on my team first, as you alluded to, and then we work inside outward. And so with that, there are things like skip level meetings. So I would put together skip level meetings and I would get my leaders comfortable with me going to the people that they lead and go take them to coffee and to lunches and ask some honest feedback and some direct questions. There are things called lateral and linear leading. I don't know. You can Google it and look things like this up. But my reality is I was living it. I didn't know what it was called, but it was me leading upwardly, me leading diagonally, dotted lines, break down. I'm this position and I do this and just go, hey, let's just get in a room together and figure out what's the problem we're trying to solve. We're great problem solvers. We want to help you. We're here to support and serve. And so I think that's where a lot of this played into the question that you asked. The other thing that I would just love to address would be that, I work together to establish vision and strategy based on the overall vision and strategy of Pastor Robert. So we began to have those conversations and we'd say it this way. Our role and job here is to steward the heart and the vision of the capital letter F, Father God, and the lowercase letter F, Father, Pastor Robert. That's why we're here. And so if we can all agree on that, we're coming from a position of like, that's a good place to be. So it's not my vision and my heart, it's more stewarding Pastor Robert's. But I think that we've earned that trust over the years, coming from different scenarios, different situations, delivering successful campaigns for different ministries. So they became some of our biggest advocates, owning failure, having difficult conversations, taking honest feedback. So just all of those things have helped us to really move our team and this organization forward.
What does owning,
like?
Quick response to that. What does owning failure mean in the context of your ministry? That is huge, because that is a really, really hard thing for teams and for leaders to do, is to own failure. Can you just touch on that a little bit? And then I'll let Jason ask his really, really good question that's coming. I don't know what he's going to ask, but it's going to be a really good question. Owning failure.
Jason, write it down so you don't forget. I think it's going to be good too. Owning failure. Giving honest feedback, having a recap meeting proactively and asking, how did we do? How did you like that video? Did that land? And getting, before the thing airs during weekend services, feedback, allowing people to speak into your art, your work, realizing that it's not a knock on you if they say, I don't like the colors, I don't like the words, we need to change this, we need to change that. So I feel like it's asking the right questions on the front end, delivering on the product, then asking the right questions on the other side of it. Your work isn't done just because it ran during weekend services and you got claps. On the other side of it, let's debrief and say, hey, what worked? What maybe is an area of improvement? And what do we need to celebrate? And who do we need to celebrate? Right? And so there are times when we don't get it right. And it's okay, how do we steward that feedback without getting our feelings hurt, without saying, oh, they said my art's ugly or anything like that? Because the reality is, we strive here at Gateway and with my department to have excellence. Let me define excellence as it's defined by our team. Excellence is doing the best you can do with what you have to work with. And so I'll ask the team, was that the best you could do with what you had to work with? And they look at me and said, 100%. We had people that were out sick, on vacation, broken toe, whatever the thing is, did you do your best? And if they can look at me and say, we absolutely did, then you auto-correct for next time, you learn from it, you grow, and we get better next time.
Yeah.
I want to take a moment to thank you for tuning in to the Missional Marketing Podcast. It's always our goal to help you as a church leader leverage your communications and digital media resources to reach more people for Jesus. One of the ways that we help churches do that is through creating social media content from your Sunday sermon videos. Specifically, what we can do for you is to create short sermon snippets from 30 seconds long to 5 minutes long, capturing those mic drop moments that you really want people to remember. We edit the videos, add captions, add your church branding, and then you or we post them to your social media channels. As a pastor, I always love to see my sermon content live on beyond the Sundays, and I know that's what you value for your sermons too. We offer this service as a monthly subscription, but we've got a 6-week trial that gives you a chance to see how it works. If you'd like more information, just shoot me an email at bblair@missionalmarketing.com. I'd be glad to meet with you, explain the process, and answer any questions that you have. Once again, thanks for tuning into our podcast. Let's get back to the interview.
A couple things. I love what you said there about the follow-up process, because we do a lot of coaching, and churches are so guilty of all this work leading up to an event, have the event, and they might have a follow-up conversation the next day, but it's on to the next thing. And I'm going, no. You need 4 weeks of after the fact to really unpack. And what did you learn? What are you going to take away and apply that to the next thing, so you're not stuck in this crazy habit? So I really appreciate you saying that. That's for you church leaders. It doesn't matter if you're a single person, you run the show, or you've got 20 people. You've got to have that follow-up.
That's right.
My question for you is, you said earlier, way back when, you said something of effective. You had to work internally. You had to focus on your team and making sure you're all on the same page. So break that down, because obviously you're leading a bigger team than most churches. Most of the churches that that are probably listening to this that may be a one-man show, one-woman show, or they might have 2 or 3 or 4 people, but maybe not 15 or 20. So how did you, 6 months of just going, I'm analyzing, I'm just taking it all in, I'm understanding what's the good, bad, the ugly. How did you do that? How did you lead your team to really make sure you had a well-oiled and a healthy machine before you could really go outwardly and help the ministries?
All right. So it's not an overnight process. You have to have patience. And really, I think without going through each one, I think the best way to say it is, and this is something that I pulled from best practices in the marketplace. I had to daily understand and walk in the fruit of the Spirit. So we had to have patience. We had to have gentleness, kindness in my responses, joy, peace. Sometimes I have a tone and I own that. I'm like, I'm sorry. I love you all. Didn't mean to have the tone. But it's daily walking in the fruit of the Spirit. I think I also had to get the right, as people like to say, you had to get the right people in the right place. I restructured our leadership. This is something that might be a nugget for somebody to hear if they have a little bit bigger team. I can only tell you what I learned and what I'm learning, but I set up what I call the triangle leadership. And let me just, if I may, I'm going to read a few things because I think it's super important, but triangles are used in bridges because they're evenly distributed weight that without changing their proportions. So did you catch that? That triangles are used to build bridges because they evenly distribute weight without changing their proportions. When force is applied on a shape like a rectangle, it'll flatten out. This beam turns square into two triangles that distribute weight evenly. So weight is distributed evenly in a triangle. All triangles have one thing in common, apart from having three sides. They're stable. But triangles aren't just mathematically significant. They're also fundamental to the way that we build our environments, both physical and virtual. Triangles are special because they're exceptionally strong. Also, 3 is the number of perfection or completion in the Bible. The number is repeated throughout the Bible as a symbol of completeness. I had an aha epiphany, and so I've set my team up with a director of marketing and support. So think our communication coordinators, they're the air traffic controllers. They control all the air traffic of all the things for all the ministries and the campuses and things that need to be said. And they help the planes to land without planes hitting in the air. So I call them our air traffic controllers. And their job is not to control. The pilot is in control, but their job is to help guide and lead and direct the people best to land the plane. Then, and this is kind of an area that's a lot of churches don't have, but we have an editorial director. All the words are important. Words matter. Pastor Robert's a grammarian, and I hope it's something we never get away from, that words matter and communicating grammar properly is important. And then the third is my creative director, who's over my film team and our creative team, the designers. Now, I do have a film lead, a design lead, and they report up to my creative director. And so it's a little bit of a unique setup, but I have found that those 3 being the decision makers has made us stronger. We have built bridges. We have been able to move things forward for our organization in a very, very healthy manner. And then there's other interactions with our other teams, and it would probably take us another hour for me to break that down with our digital strategy team and our live production team. But the reality becomes it's about collaboration. It's about working well with one another. It's about walking out daily the fruit of the Spirit. I got a couple other notes on this, but is there anything you guys want to ask on that that thought? Or
well, I'm curious too. I mean, that's phenomenal feedback, about what you were able to do there and apply that. What are some of the best practices of things you did in the marketplace that you brought over to the church? Because it's like, you're like, look at this going, why aren't you guys doing this?
I'm going to bet that some of the things we just heard are some of the best practices from the marketplace, right?
They are. So I'll tell you what, I've got bullet points for you, if that's okay. And why don't we do this? Why don't I hit the bullet points and then you stop me if you want to unpack it. Is that fair?
Let's do it.
All right. So let me back up a second, though. Let me say this, because this is important. This is very, very important. If there is nothing else, people listening to this, if there's nothing else they get out of our time together and their time spent with us, this is the most important thing. Everything changed for us when we committed as a team to Sabbath weekly. Every week, our team Sabbaths. And it was birthed out of Pastor Robert's. He did a series, Take the Day Off. It is also a book, so it is available. And I don't know your number of listeners that will be listening to this, but I'll tell you what. the number 50 sounds right to me. So if there are 50 people at the end, we can give my email. And if they're in this space of communication or even ministry and they need help in this area, they can just email me, and we'd love to bless them and just give them Pastor Robert's Take the Day Off book. That book, when we developed out the series art and worked through that, we decided as a team to commit to that. And I'm telling you guys, when we did that, and we have done that since fall 2019, it has been a game changer for our team. So all the things I'm saying are great, but we were not fully committed to that as a team. And so we are now. And I'm just telling you, that has absolutely changed how effective and efficient we are, our relationships, what we've been able to develop and create. We've been able to stretch all the things. How do you do what you do? How did you do what you were able to do during the pandemic? All those things, we Sabbath each and every week. So, but to go back to your question, let me give you a few bullet points and practical thoughts, and then we can unpack. Responding versus reacting. Be responsive. And here's the scripture story. You know, when Jesus was in the boat and the storms came and Jesus was sleeping and the disciples reacted, Jesus responded. And the power of a response versus a reaction, it's right there in the Bible. It can calm storms. It can help do away with fear and worry. And so just that idea of being responsive versus reactive, that's one nugget. The fruit of the Spirit, I mentioned those and just walking that out daily. How to best put together successful communication marketing campaigns. Prioritizing the person over the project. It's another nugget for you. Annually, we revisit our structure, and we also develop as a communication team a roadmap. We set quarterly goals, and we look at those goals and we follow up on those goals. And if we fall short of those goals, we ask why. Do we need to roll it? Oh,
I didn't want to interrupt you, but I have a question on goals. Okay. What kind of goals does a communications department set? I mean, how do you define a win for your team? Break down some of those goals, some things that maybe you would be doing practically, or also think about, let's just do that. Let's think about what are some goals that you and your team set? How do you do that?
All right. So we usually break those up by client needs. And again, when I communicate client, I mean weekend services as a client.
Yep.
Executive. One term that I changed as well. We used to have executive push-ins, and I said, no. We have executive opportunities. We have an opportunity to steward something from our executive team. How cool is that?
Yeah.
Like, who gets to do that? So let's an executive opportunity. So we break all of those out. We break out ministry campaigns or needs. So we'll put those on our roadmap. The other thing is we look at spiritual, relational, and professional. So we'll break out the roadmap on those categories. So we'll look at relational connections. Shay, who's my director of our editorial team, she wanted to put together a quarterly lunch with all of the writers and all of the content curators within Gateway that write words or review words or look at words. And she just did that recently. Well, that was on our map. That was a goal that we had as a team and she had individually. We did the same thing with our film team and our some of our creatives. So the other thing is self-development. So that's on our roadmap. So it's not just goals related to a number of people that will attend an event and things like that. It's more about laying out all of the things that are important based off of what our categorical needs are per the clients. And then we lay that out. We see if we have an overload in a quarter so we can move some things around. We had to move a few things around for some ministries because we realized in second quarter, there's just a lot going on with Easter and setting up for summer series, and like all these different things. And here comes the executive opportunity that dropped in. So it allows us just to see a clear picture of where we're going and how we're going to get there. And I'd be remiss to not mention this right now in self-development. There are 3 books that I'd highly recommend, and I'm not getting paid to share these, but I'm open to that. So, but the three books that we really dove into as a team are, and they've been important to us just in looking at. We did a lot of the things in the books, but it just cauterized and put into words, kind of like, oh, hey, that's affirming. But it's book number one is H3 Leadership: Be Humble, Stay Hungry, Always Hustle by Brad Lomenick. The second book is Developing Female Leaders by Katie Cole. Now, I'll say on that, it's not just about female leaders, but it's about leadership in general. It's a fantastic book by Katie. And number three is Herding Tigers: Be the Leader That Creative People Need by Todd Henry. Mm-hmm. All three of those are great resources for any pastor, any communication director, or anybody on the communication team.
Okay, well, I'll call Katie and Brad. Who was the third guy?
Brad Lomenick. Todd Henry.
Todd Henry. Okay, I'll give them all a call and let them know that you're open for endorsement fees or whatever it is that they want to send your way for bringing that up. Yeah.
Just send more books, because I'm giving them out like candy.
Okay. Yeah. I've read Brad Lomenick's book twice. I haven't read the other two, but I will add those to my list. Hey, we just have a few more minutes left together. Jason, what questions are burning in your mind that you want to ask?
So give us a real life example of an experiment you guys have recently done that another church can go, oh, that's a great idea. I can try and implement that in my church.
Oh, goodness. An experiment. Like help.
Something innovative. Doing anything innovative
it could
these
be
days?
It could be a campaign you ran, or some kind of a giveaway, or something that you guys just tried it. You're like, let's just go there. Let's try it.
Well, I think certainly our text line has been something that's been very, very positive, because what it allows a direct communication and a bridge to people. And so it also allows us to communicate fairly quickly with people and communicate where people are. You know, right now, I think it's more important than ever to get the right message to the right person at the right time. And if they're trusting us to have their cell phone, obviously, you have to be careful with the text communication, because what we don't want is to spam them or to ask them to give us. Like, we want to have gives to them, whether it be a reminder of, weekend services, or, hey, here's just something we'd love to share with you as a word of encouragement, things like that. So you want to be very, very careful with it and really steward it. But I think just forward looking, one of the things that we're looking at working on currently is kind of a newer space in the marketplace called MarTech, MarTech. And if you do a Google search and see the companies that are developing MarTech teams and what they're doing with this, it's really pretty fascinating. So there's a lot that we're doing in the MarTech space, mainly to know who is the one of the many. So we really want to know who is that one person that's coming to us, whether it be email or online or even in person, because we want to make sure that we're giving to them and delivering to them the right message, right time, to the right person. And for us, ultimately, it's delivering on our brand promise of, and I know I don't mean to say it like we have a brand, but we have a tagline that says we're all about people. Yeah. So if we're all about people, then I need to make sure that I'm communicating with people with what they want and what they want to hear about, not just scatter shooting and having this multi-channel, splash of information. And so it's really driving us more to an omni-channel strategy that delivers on, in the tech space, what it is that's important to them. And because that's being all about people.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I love that concept, because you're just using technology to bridge that gap of building a relationship.
100%.
And instead of saying, here's an advertisement, come to our church, right, come sit in a seat, and then we'll feed you. No. You're going to them where they are in their time of need, with their felt need, connecting with them. And then you got this process, right? You can do your discipleship path or whatever it looks like. But that, I think a lot of churches will have like a text in church. Notice the words in church. It means you have to be in church to get that whole text thing going on. What about outside the church?
That's
right.
And
so your concept of using technology, texting, to get people outside the church. Hello.
Well, I can testify to the text thing because my wife and I don't even remember. I don't even remember how or why we were sitting in our living room. We live in Frisco, Texas, and obviously Gateway is a Texas-based church. And we were sitting in our living room one evening, and we were flipping through YouTube, and we ended up on a live stream from Gateway. I think it was a live stream, and it was Pastor Jimmy Evans was preaching something, and my wife texted the number that was given. And for several weeks, she goes, "Well, they keep texting me stuff." This is more about my wife and her understanding of what she was doing when she texted the number. But she eventually unsubscribed from the text number. But that there's a lot to be said there. I would like we don't have a ton of time left, but a lot of churches have tried text, right? A lot of churches, especially in the onset of the coronavirus pandemic, they went, "Oh, well, we can use text." Could you give us a 2-minute overview of how at Gateway you have implemented text to be the tool that you think is helping move people forward, either towards Jesus or in their discipleship, or just relationally connecting? And how are you actually using the tool? And what advice would you give to churches that are thinking about implementing some kind of texting platform for their church?
I think it's a really simple answer, and that is it's meeting people where they are. And if we're going to be the best we can be at being followers of Jesus and trying to connect with people, why wouldn't we want to be where people are? And we are more on our phones and texting in how we communicate than anywhere else, maybe outside of some of the social media. But even that, you text with family and friends, you text with business associates. I think you guys even texted me, "Hey, you ready for this podcast? Let's jump on." I mean, that's how we communicated. Why wouldn't we want to go to where people are? Now, the balance is not over marketing, over communicating. You have to steward that with excellence. You have to steward it very, very well, or you will lose them and they will opt out, which is not what we want. But all that to say, I will tell you this really quick story that during the pandemic, we had someone 300, 400 miles from Dallas-Fort Worth who saw one of our promos or our ads and said, "Text if you're hurting, broken, or lost." And this particular gentleman was suicidal. And we quickly, when he texted that into us, were able to get a pastor on the phone and get him the help that he needed, all because he texted us and we gave him an invitation to text. So I am convinced more than ever before that text is a great option to connect with people, but you want to steward it well. Yep. You want to also not use it for sending, I want you to go to this event and do this thing. And you have to have some give, but ultimately, often we have it just available when they want to have a conversation. So when they reach out to us for prayer, or they reach out to us, "Hey, can you help me to find this, that, or the other?" we gladly just serve them and help answer their questions. So to have a two-way conversation with someone via text, it's invaluable.
I have one more question, and then we can land this plane. How do you get buy-in from your leadership on the things you want to do?
Ooh, that is a great question. We really do work together to establish, yearly vision and strategy based on the overall vision and strategy of Pastor Robert, Gateway Church, and our elders. I think we've really done a good job of earning trust over the years. So the buy-in, quote unquote, I believe comes from the different situations and scenarios that we've delivered, on successful campaigns for the campuses and the ministries. And, we've done our best to be responsive, under promise, over deliver, super serve our clients, if you will, and really just establish a team who is here to help support and serve, not be the doers of all the things, but how can we help solve a problem? How can we help support you in the vision, in the goal that you have for whatever it is you're trying to do and accomplish? And through that, learning to be good listeners, learning to be good problem solvers. There's been times that we've solved problems that aren't ours to solve, but that then it just really matriculates out, and it's just this wave that goes outward, And next thing you know, we have people all over this organization talking about the communication, the digital strategy team, and how great they are to work with. And the reality is, it's just treating people the way we would like to be treated.
Yeah.
Super serving, under promising, and over delivering as much as we can. And at the end of the day, that buy-in has come over time.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's important too. People that are listening, if you're in an early stage of a ministry or a space, give it time, be patient, go back to the fruit of the Spirit. There's a reason that patience is in there, and just trust the Lord daily for that daily bread, and go to the Lord, seek the Lord. I can't tell you how many times, again, we got it out of order, spiritually, relationally, professionally. Those are the three areas that we want to excel in and grow in. But if we put professionally first, and that's all we focus on, that's most important, but we ignore spiritual and relational, well, it gets out of balance. So having a good balance of those three, but if you have to sacrifice one of the three, let's make spiritual number one, relational number two. And if we have to sacrifice in an area, that professional side of it, you know what?
Yep.
We can make that up over time, I believe, because we do really good work and do great things, but that spiritual and relational piece is super important.
Yeah. Well said. Okay.
Thank you.
Clint Lewis from Gateway Church. This has been a real honor and a real privilege to have you on the show today. And I want to make sure that but before we started recording, you made a reference to the fact that you want to help other church leaders, communications directors, that you're really open to that kind of connection. You and I connected on LinkedIn, and I appreciate your responsiveness there. And I believe we've started a new relationship, and it all started on LinkedIn. How can our listeners, our audience, how can they connect with you if they have a question or would like to connect with you in some way? I think also you were alluding to the fact earlier when you were talking about Pastor Robert's book on the Sabbath, that you had some copies that you could share with some of our listeners. You want to explain to them what you meant by that and how they can connect with you?
Absolutely. Here's my email address, clint.lewis@gatewaystaff.com, clint.lewis@gatewaystaff.com. And I am on LinkedIn. So if you'll just reach out to me, I think I have 50 in a box that I'd love to give to the first 50, I suppose. And just reach out, email me, and then we'll send you that as our gift to you. Really, again, it's the one thing I want y'all to take from this podcast. If you're not Sabbathing, start now.
Yeah.
And the importance of it, God has a lot of promises in there for us in the Bible, as well as you'll read it in Pastor Robert's book. And it's super important. It's so important that I'd love to share that resource with any of the viewers or listeners of this podcast. And I hope it encourages them. And yes, I would love to connect with anyone that might need a word of encouragement or needs some direction or has further questions on anything we talked about.
Awesome. Clint, thanks again for joining us on the show today.
You bet. Thanks, Bart. Thanks, Jason.